If you saw the late Queen eat a burger, all of a sudden she is not the late Queen, because the Queen does not eat burgers. I'm sure the Queen did eat a burger in private.
What do you think the Queen's McDonald's order would have been?
Oh, she was anyone's for a fillet of fish. She was. She did. Hello, I'm William Hanson. I'm an etiquette coach, and today I'm answering questions from the Honesty Box. Should you tell someone if they have bad manners? This is the politeness paradox. It is technically bad manners to point out people's bad manners themselves. Makes my job one of the rudest jobs going. But I think it's better to lead by example rather than to actually tell them off. And if you are going to sort of correct them, it should be done in a very gentle, compassionate way. Perfect answer. When you're done, just chuck it on the ground. Can I place them there?
How politely can you chuck it away?
How should you hold a knife and fork? Great question. Well, look what's in the Honesty Box for me already. Some very expensive looking cutlery. So conventionally, the fork was held in the left hand and the knife was held in the right hand. But this goes back to a right hand bias when you were not allowed to use your left hand to write or to carry your knife. And that's not necessarily just a table knife, that was your sword as well. So there was very much a bias on the right hand. Today, it is if you are left-handed, all God's creatures, it's absolutely fine. They're all amongst us. You can just switch the cutlery. You still hold it in exactly the same way, and that is with your index finger going down the shaft of the fork, stopping just before the bridge, and your finger going down the shaft of the knife, stopping where the blade and the handle meet. So whether you're eating in a left-handed way or in a more conventional right-handed way, this is how you hold a knife and fork. And we want the handles of the cutlery tucked into the palm of your hand. We don't want them sticking out like so, and ideally try not to hold a knife like a pen because you won't have as much control over what you're cutting, and that's when you get petit pois flying off onto your neighbour's lap, and nobody wants that. How do you say scone? Scone. Do you want any more on that?
No. Why do people say it's scone and think scone is posher?
I think people say scone because they think it sounds posher, like bone or cone, but no, it's scone. Although there is an argument that they do sort of have origins at the Palace of Scone in Scotland, so there is an argument that nobody is correct and we should say scoons. But you sound like a loon if you say that. So no, it's scone, because once it's scone, it's gone. Why are elbows on the table rude? If it's a dining table, it's actually very hard to eat with your elbows on the table. But towards the end of a meal is normally when you see people doing it, particularly if it's a dinner and they're getting a bit tired and they need a bit of support. Historically, why we don't do that is because the dining tables that we used to dine from in the medieval period were, they weren't secure tables like this. They were benches with sheets of wood put on top of them. And the food was served completely differently from how it would be served now, and it was sort of put down almost like a big buffet down the middle of the table for balance and to secure it. So if you then started putting weight on another part of the table, you would tip the tables, and thus it was bad manners for you to put your elbows on the table. So it doesn't really have anything to do with etiquette. It was more sort of safety of the food and ensuring that you had food. And we're now sort of 500 plus years later so ingrained that we just don't put our elbows on the table. We sort of equate it to looking bad. It does look bad, but historically it had nothing to do with looking bad. It was just to do with the food. Should you always say bless you? Not so much anymore. There is an argument for not saying it. It goes back to sort of saying you would say bless you to someone else because in the medieval times they had the bubonic plague or might have had the bubonic plague, and so you were saying bless you as their soul left their body as they were on their way to whatever comes next. Hopefully, touch wood, we're all okay now, so there's no need to say that. But I think, again, it's like the elbows on the table thing. It's a hangover. And so it probably is better to say bless you than just sort of stare at them as they say nothing. There is a societal expectation that you say bless you. Should you raise your pinky when drinking tea? Lovely question. And again, out of my box comes a nice cup and saucer from the nearest charity shop. So, In terms of extending your little finger, it's a bit sort of Disney Hollywood to think that you do this and that posh people do this. You don't. You keep that finger tucked in. How we hold a teacup is by pinching with the thumb and the index finger between the handle, and the rest of our fingers follow the shape of the handle, and we keep our elbow nice and tucked in. The sticking the little finger thing comes from a couple of origins for it, but the one I like to say is supposedly in the court of Louis XIV and XV, where tea drinking was at its peak. It had just come in. It was very heavily taxed. So it was only the royal family in France and sort of aristocrats that could afford it. There was also quite a lot of sexually transmitted disease going around, and it was not considered polite to flirt with someone at the end of a dinner without telling them in advance that you had syphilis. And so accordingly, you would extend your little finger when flirting with them across the hall of mirrors in Versailles, and if they extended their finger back at you, great, because you can't get it twice, and you'd go and have a very nice time. We think that that's one of the reasons where extending the finger came from. And etiquette as a word goes back to Louis XIV's time. The other sort of slight syphilis-related one is that supposedly that sort of first strain of syphilis, or one of that strain that was going around at the time of Louis XIV and XV in France, was a bit like COVID. It was so virulent to begin with before medicine had sort of quelled it, that it meant your joints became crooked. And so you physically couldn't tuck your fingers in, and so the aristocracy, their staff in Versailles would look at the aristocracy and their royal families thinking, gosh, it must be so posh to drink tea with your little finger sticking out, not realising that actually it meant something very different. Kids with iPads in restaurants, ? I mean, as a child, I think maybe we did colouring in. Obviously, we didn't have iPads when I grew up. But the moment that the food came, colouring in went away, and we ate and we chatted, or at least observed the adults around us chatting. And I think the same thing should go for iPads. It's fine to have an iPad, but when the food comes, it has to go. And if the child is having an iPad, please can they have child-friendly headphones, because I don't want to hear Peppa Pig as I'm eating over on the other table. Thank you very much. Should men pay on the first date? So I would say one of the biggest areas of change with etiquette is around dating. And I would say whoever initiated the date should pay. So if I asked somebody out on a date, other than my husband being slightly alarmed that I've done that, but if I asked someone out on a date, I would pay. If they asked me out on a date, they would pay. Can you split the bill? Maybe if the date had gone badly and you think there's absolutely not a hope in hell of us ever meeting again. However, some people say they'd much rather split the bill, even if it's the most phenomenal date, and then everyone just pays, half. It's fine. As long as you talk to one another and everyone's happy with whatever arrangement, it doesn't really bother me.
What else has changed in dating?
The Georgians had a lovely idea, which I do think we could bring back, called the bundling board, which is where you were allowed to, once a couple had become engaged, they were allowed to spend the night together, but not to, see if, they were compatible in that way, but just to sort of see, did they snore, for example. And so a wooden board was put down the middle of the bed, and it was always in the bride-to-be's house, family house. The family would wait up to hear if there are any untoward noises going on upstairs, and you would just sort of spend the night together just to see, did they pass wind? Were they pleasant to share a bed with? And I think we all need to bring that back. Worst thing to eat while following proper etiquette? Well, burgers are pretty sort of messy. I mean, sort of restaurant burgers where they are so big, you are going to have to deconstruct the burger. I know I get into a lot of controversy online for doing that. I think possibly my Esther to America has been terminated, but it is better just to sort of deconstruct it and cut and eat it with a knife and fork. Yes, they're delicious if that's your thing and you want to eat a burger, whether it's beef, chicken or a veggie burger. However, it is a burger at the end of the day. And if you're trying to present a certain type of image to either the person you're on a date with, a colleague, a future employer, an ambassador, whoever it is, don't order the burger. If you saw the late Queen eat a burger, all of a sudden she is not the late Queen, because the Queen does not eat burgers. I'm sure the Queen did eat a burger in private, but in public you have your public and private image, and actually sometimes you need to not necessarily order the thing that you want to. Go back the next day and have the burger when you're not around other people if you desperately want it.
What do you think the Queen's McDonald's order would have been? A secret McDonald's order?
Oh, she was anyone's for a fillet of fish. She was. She did. Is it okay to ask for seconds? No. If it is offered, if you come to my house and there is leftover lasagna or something, I would say, would anyone like any more? That is fine. But if you can see some lasagna on the side and it hasn't been offered, unfortunately as a guest you can't say anything. And maybe that's because the host is thinking, good, well, that'll do my lunch tomorrow. So I don't need to offer. Or maybe there's only one portion and there are 6 guests. And actually, someone's going to, well, quite a lot, 5 people could potentially get left out. So no, if it's not offered, don't ask for it. Do you break the rules when you're alone? It's going to make me sound really boring if I say no. But not really. I'm sure I'm sometimes a couple of days late sending a thank you letter or something like that. But generally etiquette it's meant to be like driving a car. It's not meant to be this restrictive straitjacket. It is just meant to be this thing that becomes quite natural.
If there was a rule that you would break when you're at home, what is it?
No, I'm going to sound so boring because I can't think of anything.
What do you think following etiquette?
But I'm sure I'm not perfect.
No.
Close to it, but not perfect. I mean, what are you trying to?
I don't know. Putting your
fart.
feet up on. Yeah.
No.
We not fart alone.
No, I've never farted.
I don't believe a word of it.
There was one occasion where a little bit of Chanel No. 5 just lingered behind me, but I'm not sure if that was a fart. Is it ever okay to fucking swear? No, it fucking isn't. Let's be honest. Yes, people swear. I think if you swear all the time, again, it loses its currency. So if you're a Gordon Ramsay and you're swearing it's almost to be expected. And I think we tune it out. We don't hear it, which is unfortunate. If I swear in front of friends, they probably know that I'm probably quite irked because I don't necessarily swear an awful lot. Or if I do swear, I'm sort of swearing for comedy effect. If you're swearing, and I'm thinking certain words, normally beginning with C, that people use a lot, and they sort of think it's funny. It's like, it's not that funny that often, to be perfectly honest. So use it sparingly. Is it more polite to be early or late? Well, it depends on context. Socially, if I said to someone, come for dinner at 7:30, what I do not want is people to be early. I would much rather someone was half an hour late than 5 minutes early. I'm probably not ready at 7:25, but I will be ready from 7:30. For a business meeting, however, if it says it starts at 11, it means it starts at 11, not you rock up at 11, go to the loo, log onto the Wi-Fi, get a tea and coffee, ready, and then sort of by about 10 past 11, you're ready to start. So there you arrive a little bit early, ready to start at the time the meeting says. What do you do if you forget someone's name? I forget hating people's names. I try to keep lists of names, particularly for restaurant or places I go. But if you do forget, particularly at a party, your very good friend Bob comes over to say hello to you, you have to introduce Bob and the person whose name you have forgotten, you can do one of several things. You can either go, I assume you two have met, and then hopefully they go, no, we haven't. Hello, I'm Bob. Hello, I'm Steve, and it's fine. Or you do the introduction, you go, Bob, I'd like you to meet, and you go, I'm so sorry, please remind me of your name. Steve, no, Steve, I know your first name, I meant your last name. Jones, Steve Jones, may I introduce Bob Smith? And you do it that way round. It's a complete bluff. Steve might clock to what you're doing, but again, he doesn't have to flag that he knows what was happening there. What are the best biscuits for dipping? None, because then you get a soggy biscuit. Nobody likes that.
Come on, you're telling me you don't dunk a biscuit?
I don't dunk a biscuit.
A rich tea?
No.
A hobnob?
I don't dunk my hobnob.
What's the poshest biscuit?
The poshest biscuit, biscotti, probably,
Yeah.
which is just Italian for biscuit, really. How has social media impacted etiquette? Big time. Etiquette has to reflect and adapt to the society that is around us. Otherwise, etiquette would not exist. And it's a shapeshifter. It constantly changes. And social media is such a big part of our lives. And etiquette is about interacting with other people. And how a lot of us interact with other people now is via using social media. I guess the thing that's springing to mind is the comment section, of which on this very video there is a comment section. And I'm saying this with love. Just because you can comment doesn't mean to say you should. They're not going to want me to say that because we want engagement. But if you've got something worthwhile to say it. But don't say anything if you don't have anything worthwhile to say. Don't feel you need to. We don't have to have an opinion on everything. It'd be very boring. Should you wear shoes inside? So in some cultures, absolutely not. In Japan, for example, they're very big on removing shoes when you go into someone's house. I don't love taking off shoes when I go to someone's house, unless, of course, I've walked through a field. They're caked in mud. They are very dirty. If hosts are that worried about their carpets, their floors getting dirty, just don't invite people round. Go out to a restaurant or something. However, their house, their rules. So if a host does want you to take off the shoes, it would be very churlish to sort of refuse to do that. If you are one of the sort of the shoes off brigade and you want your friends and family to take off their shoes, make sure there is something, for them to sit on to remove their shoes. It might be fine for a 20-year-old to sort of whip off their shoe whilst looking like a flamingo standing on one leg. But actually, an older generation might want a small puff or something to sit on, so make sure you've got one of those handy. Are Irish exits okay? No, not really. I mean, the only time, I think I did one once where it was at a wedding and the couple was so paralytic. I thought even if I do say goodbye to them, there's not a hope in hell they're going to remember it. So I did just go, and my taxi had arrived and had sort of been waiting sufficiently long enough that I was going to start getting charged. But no, generally you do at least need to say goodbye to one, if not both of the hosts, whatever you are at. Isn't life a bit short to be worrying about these things? You're missing the point. I don't think life is too short to worry about other people's feelings. I think life isn't long enough. Do Gen Z have no etiquette? I actually think Gen Z are probably more aware of how their actions impact others than generations above them. Certainly from my own experience, when I have had millennials come up to say hi to me in the street, and I am a millennial, they're quite entitled. They sort of feel as if you have to stop and talk to them, and it's sort of their right that you do that. Whereas all the Gen Z people are so cautious. They're conscious if I'm chatting to somebody already in the street, they will wait until I finish my conversation. They will come over and say, I'm so sorry, would you mind if we just awfully sort of said hi or got a photo? So no, it's not all doom and gloom with Gen Z. Have you ever had a pyjama day? Yes, when I was ill in hospital. But other than that, I wear clothes, because if your clothes are half decent, they should be just as comfortable as your pyjamas.
Do you not have kind of relaxing clothes which you'll change into after a day?
Oh yeah, I take off my tie, that sort of thing, walk around in a shirt. But no, I don't. Are you asking me if I have athleisure wear?
No, yeah, whatever you wear to relax in.
I genuinely would wear this around the house.
Yeah.
I think this is quite casual. It's LADbible. I thought they won't want a tie.
I thought you might dress up for the occasion, but there we go.
Oh! Start the car. Is lying okay to be polite? Oh, great question. Yeah, if it protects someone's feelings, then yes, I think it's okay to... A little white lie is fine. A small lie, nothing sort of massive. That's a lovely shacket, for example. You could say, just riffing, what a lovely part of the world we're in. It's so quiet. That would be fine if you want to sort of lie to protect someone's feelings. But I wouldn't, if it's a malicious lie, then that's when it's not good. What is your pet peeve when it comes to etiquette? It's niche. Probably doesn't annoy many other people. When people say, you can't toast with water, it's unlucky. That was correct 500 years ago, where the water was full of cholera. We're very fortunate to live in a society, certainly in Britain and most of the Western world, where the water is absolutely fine and is not full of bacteria. If you are Muslim, Hindu, a recovering alcoholic, pregnant, on very strong antibiotics, underage, or just don't want to drink that particular evening out of personal preference, what are you going to do? You can't suddenly just have a sip of wine to be polite. You can toast with any cold drink. I wouldn't toast with tea or coffee, but water, it's absolutely fine. And so, again, it's niche, but it's when people try to sort of say that particular rule, not realising the origin of it. And for me, and I spend a lot of time trying to research where we get these rules from and how we have ended up, that particularly annoys me because there's no logic behind it. And the rule has got to make sense. If it doesn't make sense, you can get rid of it as a rule. Should you make your bed in an hotel? Well, depends on the type of hotel you're in. I would say if you're paying for housekeeping or you've requested for housekeeping, then no, there's no need. You don't want to make your bed look like an absolute sort of bombs hit it before you go out for the day and put the "please make up my room" sign on the door. But you don't need to do it yourself because that's part of what you're paying for. You don't get a reduction in your room rate. So no, you don't need to make your bed. Just tidy up nicely. How should you get the waiter's attention? None of this, all that, no oi, don't need to shout. It's simply done with body language. So you sort of sit up and back, eye contact, hand at the level of your eye is absolutely fine. And if they're well trained, they should come over. The main differences between the USA and Britain in terms of manners. Well, it's not all doom and gloom in America with American manners. And I think there's a lot that Brits can learn from Americans about general sort of interpersonal skills in particular. I think in America, the default setting, if an American meets a new person, is that we like you until you annoy us. Whereas in Britain, our default setting is we're a little bit suspicious of you until we get to know you. And then we warm up. Whereas in America, it's so full on, and then potentially peters off when they get to know you and think you're a bit of a twit. But I think it's probably better to sort of start seeing the positive in people than be a little bit suspicious and wary, which we are in Britain. And maybe that's because we're a small island nation and they're not. I don't know. What is posh? It's a great question. I mean, for a start, you wouldn't really seriously use the word posh if you were posh. We like the term upmarket, which is a bit nicer, or smart. They're a smart couple is better. Posh is a bit naff as a word, unless you're using it ironically. But actually, certainly in Britain, what posh doesn't necessarily mean, is not linked to money. It is a state of mind, and actually in Britain, the truly smartest people aren't as fussed about material possessions.
Where does posh come from?
Some people think that port out starboard home is the origin of posh, and that was supposedly because of the type of cabin that you might have on a crossing. That's been debunked numerous times, so it's got nothing to do with that. We don't quite know where the origin of posh comes from, but we all know what it means. Is it fine to play music aloud in public? No. Again, watching videos on your phone without headphones, playing music, just because your phones can doesn't mean to say you should. I want to come up with some sort of GoFundMe type thing where we all can carry around you can't get on public transport anywhere in the UK or indeed elsewhere, but we GoFundMe where everyone has at least 5 pairs of disposable, very cheap headphones that you can just sort of pass out to people and go, would you like these? And hopefully they get the message. That would be nice. Should you wear hats indoors? Oh, great question. No, I mean, so a gentleman's hat, such as a fedora, a Homburg, a baseball cap, they are all considered accessories. So you remove it when you come inside. The exception to that would be hotel lobbies or department stores or lifts, because you are transiting through them. But if you are walking into a restaurant, you're walking into a friend's house, for example, an office block, that type of hat comes off. If it is a sort of a traditional lady's hat, and I'm talking like a hat you'd wear to a wedding or to Royal Ascot, that's often plumbed into the hair. It is considered part of the whole outfit, and so they may stay on. So it depends on what type of hat, but generally most hats are outdoor. They're there to protect you from the sun. There's not a lot of sun indoors. Which country has the best manners in the world? Well, I want to probably say Japan. I think they're very respectful in Japan. They're probably the only country that make the British look relaxed. I think that's probably my take on Japan. Singapore, also very polite as well. It's probably not a Western country, is the answer to this question, which is quite, as a Westerner, is quite sad. What are the 3 most important things you think everyone should know or learn? You can never say please, thank you, and sorry enough. Please and thank you in particular. You need to have good eye contact when you speak with people, and you should always be more interested in other people than interested in yourself. What's the politest way to end a conversation you don't want to be in? If it's a group of people, it's very easy just to sort of go, basically. I mean, I would sort of just say, I'll see you all later, and off you go. And the conversation can continue, or I'll be back in a minute. That's fine, even if you're not. But if you're talking with just one person, it's quite difficult. Ideally, I mean, we've all been that person at a party with no one to talk to. Nobody likes it. So try to introduce them to someone else before you exit the conversation. That's always better. Should you laugh if you didn't understand the joke? It is polite to give people the reaction they sort of want. If you understand why they think it is funny, I think it's okay to laugh. But you obviously don't want to laugh at something that you don't sort of understand in case you get asked a follow-up question, or in case it's offensive and you're actually laughing at something that's not really meant to be funny, but someone thinks it is. I always remember my late grandmother would cut out cartoons from the Times that she would find funny. And she would bring them when she would come for dinner and sort of show my parents and my brother and me. And James and I didn't really find them very funny, but we sort of go, oh, that's very funny, that's excellent. And my parents just go, well, I don't really get it. And Granny looked so upset. And I remember saying to my parents, just laugh, just give her a little laugh. So I think sometimes it's okay to politely laugh in the interests of good manners.
There was a young lady of 18 who was quite determined to join the Mile High Club. I don't know how she met this chap or how she discussed it or how they'd agreed to do this, but the cabin crew went and stopped her, and then she sat back down in her seat, and then about half an hour later she was back up with another chap trying to join the Mile High Club again. But then my friend said that she went to speak to her parents because she was actually travelling with her mum and dad.